Hello everyone. This video is designed to give you some key Excel insights when working on assignment number 2 in the class. Okay, so in this video in particular, we're going to look at some of the things that you should consider when you're actually creating frequency distributions that compare two distributions at one time. Also, we're going to look at how to create a single chart that compares the two distributions. Third, we're going to look at step-by-step calculations using Excel for calculating the mean, variance, and standard deviation. And finally, we're going to look at some of the Excel functions that provide you with direct calculations of central tendency and measures of dispersion. So let's begin. We've got two data sets here, one in column B, group A, and the other in column G, group B. And the first thing that we'll want to do is to create a frequency distribution for both of these data sets. Step number 1 will be to decide the range of scores. Now this is different from just looking at a single distribution because the range of scores for each distribution need to include the minimum and maximum scores from both distributions. So the first thing you want to do is identify for both of your data sets what the highest value and the lowest value is in your data set. In group A, you can see that the lowest value is 18 and the highest value is 29. In contrast, in group B, it's 19 as the lowest value and the highest value is 33. So our two distributions should have scores starting from the lowest value of both distributions, which is going to be 18, and as high as 33. So step number 1 will be to include the highest and lowest value for both distributions here. And we can use the file handle to actually accomplish this for both. So even though in group A the numbers go as high as 29, we're also including it going up to 33. And likewise, we can actually just copy these values using the copy command, Control C and then Control V. And so we have the same scores for both distributions here. Now we're going to use the COUNTIF command. And this was described in an earlier video where we're going to identify the range for group A, which is in column B. And then the criteria we're going to use, we're going to start with that first cell there for 18 and then end with a parentheses there. And we see that one occurrence of the value 18, but then we're going to use the file handle to move this down to the bottom of the distribution. And there we see our count of scores here. Likewise, we'll do the same thing for group B, COUNTIF with the range in column G, criteria being start with 18, enter, and then use the file handle to move this right down to the bottom here. And there we go. We have our frequency distribution. The key thing is here that both distributions are using the same range of scores here. Now that we've got our frequency distributions, we can go on to step number 2, and that's create a single chart that compares both distributions. Now, given that we're creating a frequency polygon, one of the key features of the frequency polygon is that at both ends of the distribution, we have the lines intersect with the x-axis. So we need to actually extend both ends of the frequency distribution one additional interval. So we'll add the interval number 17 to the low end and 34 to the high end of the distribution. And with the file handle, we will extend the frequency calculations as well. Do this for group B. And then file handle up. And we've got that already. That already worked for the other end here. Now we're ready to create our frequency polygon that compares group A to group B. So the first thing that we'll want to do is highlight the frequencies starting with group A. Then to keep the group A highlighted while we move over to group B, I'm going to press the control key, then continue highlighting the frequencies for group B. Once they're highlighted, I can go to the insert menu, move over to the icon that shows the variety of line graphs that Excel has, and I'm going to select this graph here, which shows both the lines and the dots representing each of the frequencies. I click on that. It produces what is a very close approximation of the frequency polygon. There's a couple things, of course, that need to be adjusted. You'll notice along the x-axis, they do not have the values of the scores that we're using. And you'll see that the two lines are identified as series 1 and series 2 here. We can make these changes rather easily using the select data icon. This will actually allow us to make all the changes that I just identified here. To change the values of the x-axis, you're going to click on the horizontal category axis labels and edit. Click on the edit command, and then you're just going to highlight the scores going from 17 to 34. You say OK. And you'll notice that change is already being seen there. The next thing you'll want to do is change series 1 to say group A and series 2 to say group B. So click on series 1, click on edit, and you'll see that there's a spot here that allows you to type in the name that you'd like to call it. So we're going to call it group A, say OK, and you'll see that change reflected right away. And of course, then edit the series 2 and call that group B, capital B. Okay. Now that's done, you say OK. And of course, what you'll want to do is also put a title in, click on the title spot, says, and you might want to call this, in this case, frequency distribution of scores group A versus B. Okay, if you're happy with that title, put it in. Of course, as you've seen in other videos, to add the axis titles, click on that plus sign icon and you can axis labels in. Frequency, there, scores on the bottom. And there you have your frequency polygon. Okay, the next thing you'll want to do, and we can just sort of set this whole thing aside here. The third thing we want to do is step-by-step calculations for the mean, variance, and standard deviation. Let's start with calculating the mean. So the first thing that you'll want to do here is, well, you know, the formula for the mean is the sum of x over n. I've already identified that in this data set that we have 25 observations in each of these data sets. So all we will really need to do is sum up the values for group A and group B. So in order to do that, you can take advantage of the auto sum button here. So you place your cursor in the cell that you want your sum to appear. And in this case, it's in column M9 here. Click on auto sum. Now what auto sum is going to do is highlight the numbers in closest proximity to the cell that you clicked on. Of course, the numbers that we want to add up are all in column B here. So all I need to do is click on column B here, and our sum formula will change to reflect that. Once that's done, press enter, and you get the number. It sums up to 593, and we're going to do the same thing for group B. Auto sum for everything in column G. Press enter, and we have that number. Now it's simply to calculate the mean. You're going to use a formula. Start with the equal sign, tap on the sum of x for column A, which we just calculated, using the divide, that's a / key, and then click on the cell when you had entered the n number of observations in, press enter, and we get the mean there. And we can use file handle to just find the mean of group B. So now that we've calculated the mean, we're ready to calculate the deviations from the mean for both group A and group B. We begin by moving to the cell adjacent to that first observation in group A. And we're going to create the deviation from the mean formula by beginning with clicking on the equal sign, then clicking on that first value in cell B2. We're going to subtract the value from cell B2 with our value of the mean, which is located in this case, cell N9. Now what we want to do is we're going to, of course, use the file handle to do all the other calculations for the remaining numbers in our data set. So what we'll need to do is make sure that when we slide the values down, that each value is subtracted by the mean in N9. So we're going to be using the dollar signs in front of the value of N for the column number, and dollar sign in front of 9 in the row. That's creating what we call absolute cell referencing, which I talk about in a previous video. Press enter, and now we're ready to get the deviations from the mean for each observation in group A. So using the cell handle or file handle, we get those values. We'll do the same thing for our group B equals. Now this time I'm clicking on the cell G2, subtract that from the mean of group B, which is located in cell N10, and we'll of course add the dollar signs in front of the column and the row. For that, press enter, and now we're ready to use the file handle to get all the values in this data set, or the deviations for each of the values in the data set. Great. Now, of course, if we were to sum these values up, we know that they come out to 0. So, of course, we need to square each of these values. So let's begin. At the first observation in group A, starts with the equal sign. We're going to take our deviation from the mean, which is in cell C2, and now we are going to square that value. In Excel, to use an exponent to square, the symbol is the caret sign, which is located on your keyboard just above the letter or the number 6. So Shift 6 gives you the caret sign, and that's to say that we're going to take the exponent of that value, and the exponent we're doing is squaring, so it would be caret 2 there. And so that number squared gives you that value here, and we're going to use the file handle to come up with the squares of all the deviations from the mean for group A, and likewise we're going to do the same thing for group B. There we go. Now we'll want to sum up those deviations. So all we need to do is click on the cell you want the sum deviations to appear. In this case, it is in cell 09 here. I'm going to use the auto sum command. When I do that, I just have to highlight the column that my deviations squared from the mean are and press enter. There's my sum deviation there. And we'll do the same thing for group B. Now we're ready to calculate variance. And variance, of course, is the average of that sum squared deviation from the mean. So all we need to do is take this number and divide it by n. However, in this case, we're going to treat this as a sample. So the sum squared deviations is going to be divided by n minus 1. So we're going to use the following formula, equals tap okay, and then we're going to take 25 minus 1 and press enter. And there's your variance for group A, and we can just use this file handle to get the variance for group B. Now, as you know, variance is the average squared deviation from the mean. It's not as interpretable as if the numbers were in the same unit as the numbers appear. So we get rid of the squared. We convert it from the squared values by taking the square root, and from that we get standard deviation. So we're going to create standard deviation from variance by taking the equal sign, using the Excel command for square root, which is sqrt bracket. Click on the value of variance here and the bracket here, and that's our value for group A. And we can use the file handle to come up with the value of standard deviation for group B. Great, and there you go. Now the final thing I want to do in this video is to show you how to do the calculations of mean, median, and standard deviation using the Excel functions. So you don't need to necessarily go through the step-by-step calculations used in Excel, but however, it is fun to do nonetheless. So I'm going to just review very quickly the commands that you want to use to calculate each of these measures, mean, median, and standard deviation. So to calculate the mean in Excel, you're going to, again, begin with putting the equal sign into the cell. Now in Excel, for the mean is actually average here. So you would actually type in the word average, and then select the cells that include the values that you want to average. That would be all the values in column B. and with the parentheses. And as you see, you get the correct values there. Let's do the same thing for group B. Average. And that works out there. The median, the function for the median is median here. And you would just highlight all the values in your data set. And you would get the median for group A, the median for group B. Now, the final thing I want to show you is the calculations for standard deviation. Excel has a number of standard deviation functions. The one I want to highlight, the two that you would be using, one for the sample, the other for population. Let's actually focus in on the sample. So to find the standard deviation, the command would be stdev dot, notice here, it gives you a choice between two. .s is for the sample, .p is for the population. So we're treating these groups of data as samples. So it would be .s, parentheses, highlight the scores, end it, and we can do the same thing for group B, highlight the scores, and there you go. As you can see, the values calculated by the Excel functions come out to be exactly the same as the values when we were calculating this out by the step-by-step method. So that's it. Good luck on your assignment. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Bye for now.